Hi, I'm John DeArmond.
And I'm Edward.
And we're with Coquille Valley Sword Group, and today we're going to be talking about nagashi hidari. Nagashi hidari is the fourth kata in the Tachiseiho. It is the first kata that we see any kind of defensive motion out in the open. It's a pretty interesting kata, so sit back and enjoy. The characters that make up nagashi hidari are fairly simple. We are already familiar with the hidari character, which of course means to the left, and how our school uses it to strike to the left at the end. This first character, uke, means to receive. So in most Japanese styles, when you're learning how to fall safely on the ground, it is called ukemi, or to receive the ground. The second character is nagashi. Nagashi means to flow, to harmonize with. And so together you have receive, flowing reception that then proceeds to the left. Now, what does that mean, right? In most sort of Koryu parlance, how we speak about techniques in Japanese work, we have uke and we have dome, right? Uke is what we in the West would think of as a parry. It is work that deflects their work without directly opposing it or trying to stop it from moving. Whereas dome would be more like a traditional, like I have blocked and stopped your work from progressing. That's pretty much it. In Hyoho, we tend to do a lot more of the uke and less of the dome. Though we do have one kata in the Tachiseiho and another in the Kodachiseiho that are Aisen uchidome, right? Harmonious timing, strike and block. So, with this out of the way, let's go ahead and look at the basic way that we do the kata in the beginning. So, the paused two-handed version. So, the basic form of the nagashi kata, hidari specifically, is with the paused step. So, for this, I will be uchidachi, Eddie will be shidachi. We'll go through it once at normal speed, and then we'll go through it slow and explain the individual steps. Alright, so from the beginning, uchidachi starts off doing the same work that he always does until the end. Shidachi starts off in Gedan. As I push into Chudan, he comes up. As I push up in the Hasso, he drops down into Gedan. We take our customary 3 steps. Son. Now, I'm going to step forward and swing after the pause. Shidachi steps across with their right foot to become in line with the left foot, your other right.
That's cross step.
Boop. As he does this, he makes a scooping motion.
Like you're scraping the wall almost.
Exactly. With the right hand. The sword will come just slightly above the head. He wants the sword to be perpendicular to the line of attack. In other words, sword should not be forward, sword should not be back. Nice and square. He wants to give me a very big target to see and to sort of subconsciously aim for. His backhand, in the basic form of the kata, also comes up. So I cut, he steps, he rotates it around horizontally like a helicopter, bringing his left foot up and around to face Hasso at an oblique angle to the line of attack. So if this is the line of attack, he was here, cross step, step into Hasso so that he can cut into my space. I see this position and I know that I'm in danger. So I try and retreat and step out, and he catches me in that time. I turn my forearm so he has something to strike, and then he presses down until he is level with my throat. I drop my hands all the way to Hasso. He's going to use his front foot to take a little tiny step and push me. 1, as I retreat, 2 steps. We come back to crossed position, and then begin Kamae Otoku, just as with all the other katas. I released Tate Zen, he released Geidon, I chicken step, he chicken steps, and we return to our starting positions. The kata in and of itself is fairly simple. The points that are important that people sometimes have trouble with are that first step. So when you step, I'm going to try and get my feet in the camera here. I walk 1, 2, 3. My right foot should be the forward foot. As I step, I do not want to cross my foot in front of my rear foot. What I want to do instead is to step in line with that foot so that I am making a new line parallel to the line of attack. As I do this, I want to keep my face facing forward because, again, that's their focus point. If I start shifting my head around, they're going to perceive the motion easier and they're going to hit me without necessarily having any special skill to do so. So, step, step, right? With my cross-stepping foot, the left foot that comes across, boop, right? Ideally, my toes are pointed forward. Now, there are variations of this that I use where I'm working this a little bit more aggressively and less trying to get in between the time, in which case my toes will hit in that same front line, but I will kick my heel out to almost a 45-degree angle and drop my knees so that they almost touch. Exactly, the potty knees. This allows me to come straight in without any major adjustment to my hips because they're already sort of set up to be able to cut. But this is not the way it's officially done. It's just a variation that I use often. Next is the motion in the sword. First thing that beginners tend to do is do something like this, where their tip leads up and over. You will almost never be faster than their sword, and what will happen is you'll actually come in behind their sword and you'll still be hit. Plus, the motion does not apply support or structure or force in the direction that the blow is coming from, and so it's very bad. Don't do it, right? What we want is for the edge of our sword to scoop up, right? Now, in uke-nagashi and how this is specifically used, we want to scoop, bump, so that it is just above our head. My arm is at about a 45-degree angle. I want to make sure that my edge is up. Now, depending on how close he is, my edge will be more up. So if we are very, very close, right? But my edge can be almost straight up because it's not going to contact his edge. But if he's started taking his cuts sort of further out, he's just trying to split it, well, I'm going to have to roll my sword further back to avoid contacting his edge, right? Because if I contact his edge, we're going to bind right away, and aside from just damaging our swords and very likely breaking them, it retards my timing. It keeps me from being able to do this work efficiently, and I get caught in his rhythm then. Novices will often catch with this kind of edge to edge. And on Boken, you don't have the same grip on the edge, and so it's difficult to recognize how it affects your timing and the rest of your motion. However, doing it edge to edge like that, you will break a lot of Boken, so, don't do it, right? It's not very smart. Now, the sort of order of operations for this is to conceal our step off the line with this motion, right? Well, we want to bring this object into their field of vision, like a beautiful magician's assistant, so that they don't see the trick, right? From there, the way we receive the strike is a little bit easier to see from the side, right? What I'm doing is, as I release that back foot, my hips and shoulders come with me, and I accelerate my hand a little bit. Now, it is not important that they hit your sword. It's only important that they think they can hit your sword. In other words, if I'm swinging at Eddie, or let's say Eddie's swinging at me, right? And I move it too fast, it's going to pull his vision towards me, and he's just going to follow me. He said, "What's that? What? Well, that's a very interesting thing." Boom. His eyes will take his shoulders, which will take his arm, which will take his sword, right into me without him having to do anything special. What I want is for him to always have the feeling like, yeah, I can hit that. I can hit that, and it looks kind of weak, whether it's one-handed or two-handed. I'm just going to push through it. I'm going to cleave this dude, right? Now, you can have it make contact, and that's fine. Or at the last second, you can displace it, sort of Indiana Jones, take the idol, put the sand, right? The second one is probably a little bit better, but don't feel fanatical in chasing it, right? If you can do it, that's fine. If you can't, it's not a huge detriment. So, we've stepped, we've got our position, and now we wait a little bit, because usually we're quite close, right? Now, if I were to have done this exact kind of motion in a fight, I would not wait, right? I would strike him immediately, or I would displace the distance, or I would move around him. So I'll demonstrate that. He cuts, one, right away. Tsukate, right, displace the distance rearward, displace it to the side, right? I want to move away from where his sword is, where it's going, right? And where I'm kind of convincing it to go. Now, in Kata, of course, we wait, right? And again, it's so we can start to study the timing. Because there's advantage in hitting him in that half beat and letting things kind of play out a little bit, especially from a early learning perspective. So, up, he retreats, and I come in. I am stepping into Koshimi Hanmi, right? My hips are parallel to the line of attack. I am striking obliquely inward into him. Onto his forearm, I press it down to his throat, I push, boom, and I retake the center line. And the kata proceeds from there. Hopefully by now, you're starting to see the basic system of how we set our kata up. Because we have these sort of repetitive elements that are there both as placeholders and as items that are worth additional attention, like this little follow-through step, how to drive into the line, how to apply Koshimi Hanmi for power and control, not just in terms of my sword on him or in him or on his weapon to control him, but control by the virtue of my position. In other words, if I'm sitting here to Eddie and he's very square to me, this is a very equal position, right? We both can kind of use all of our tools. But the moment I start coming over here, off the line of attack, whichever side I want, I start limiting his ability to use half of his work, right? Now, of course, you know, his method may have all sorts of tools and ornamentation to get him back into an orientation where he can apply his work better. And undoubtedly, it will also contain things where he can start to take advantage of the position and making his position better. This type of setting up your position in relation to the enemy is very important. But it is somewhat difficult for beginners because in the beginning, of course, we want to be good. We don't want to look like we're bad. We want to sort of reinforce our superhero fantasies. And so we tend to favor just direct action, right? I come in and I hit him. I come in and I work him. I come in and I throw him, or I wrestle him, or I lock him, or whatever. But really, of course, there are plenty of opportunities where you can work directly and just succeed right away. But when you start fighting people who are of a higher caliber, they're going to be able to interfere with that a lot. And so by trading one of those sort of direct attacks for a motion that improves your position, right? Because when you improve your position, you're not just helping yourself out, you're hindering them, right? You're putting yourself where you can use tools efficiently on a wide range of targets that you want, while you're retarding their ability to respond in kind or to defend themselves against your action. So there's a lot of benefit to it. And it's not very complicated, so don't feel intimidated. Just play with it a little bit and see what you can do. Good exercise for this is let your partner swing at you with a fukuroshinai while you're not using anything, and try to step to places that confound him and sort of halt his work. Right?
Don't go backwards.
Yeah, backwards is not so great, right? Backwards is just you're buying time, and when you're at a strategically weak position, right, whether because of your skill or your constitution or the environmental factors, and you just buy time, all you're doing is prolonging your doom, all right? So
It's not even like a reset.
no, it's you just lose out on it. So let's go ahead and look at some of the other variants to this work that you can practice. Now that we've gone over the basic form of the kata, let's look at some of the more developed forms of it. So in Hyoho, as you guys know, I hope, if you've been reading the Gorin no Sho, we emphasize using the sword with one hand. And ukanagashi is a great example of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the work one-handed without a pause. So the timing for this is obviously a little bit different, a little bit more dynamic, and quite a bit easier to throw, actually. I mean, it is very important to do the two-handed pause version in the beginning so that you can really begin to bring the concepts of ukanagashi as we do it into your bones, all right? So that you can protect yourself without effort and without intention, right? Because in the same way, we want to just be like, and to cut the guy without thinking, when the guy cuts at us, right? We want to defend ourselves without thought in terms of how do I do it? We might choose to do it if we have enough warning, but oftentimes you don't, right? Because people are sneaky, and people who train and want to win or even sneakier, right? Warfare is deception, right? So, again, I will be uchidachi, Eddie will be shidachi. This is the no pause version with one hand. So we step as normal, ba, 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 and he steps to the side, ba, ba. So he pushes, I retreat. Now when Eddie did this, he stepped out with his lead foot rather than cross-stepping.
That's my fault.
In the later uke nagashi kata, not uke nagashi migi, but nagashi uchi, which is kind of the grandpappy kata of this. You'll use a wide step for the second step instead of a cross step. They're somewhat interchangeable, but the cross step is more difficult to learn, and so that's why it's put in first. It's also more subtle against their perception, so it's more better. So we'll do this slow one more time. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. So we take our steps, boom, boom, boom. As I go to cut, he cross steps and raises with just one hand. The sword slips and he immediately starts to cut at me. Now I'm also immediately sort of retreating, right? I don't want to get caught right here because he has the initiative, right? I know that he can whoop me with his ska or his suba or just strike me with his fists. I know that he can just pull out a tanto and shiv me if he's good with grappling, right? Down I will go and it's very inconvenient. So I'm trying to avoid to get out of here. And I really want to suck back. You know, and this is good practice for you to just go, no, right? But in the same instance, he's studying how to follow someone who retreats with alacrity, right? So, some key points to this, just as with the original form, the paused two-handed version, he's going to bring his sword to the same position, right? So, whoop, in the block. Bah, right? So it is just to where it can pass over his head, right? Arm is at the 45, the blade is perpendicular. He's catching it so that my edge is either on his ji or his shinogi ji. So the forward plane or the rear plane of the central dividing spine, the shinogi, right? Now, what he wants to make sure he doesn't do, and this is a little bit more of a problem with work that is two-handed than one-handed because we're crossed up, is when we first try and block things, we try and make it active, right? We think, here is this cut, it's coming at me, and I'm going to stop. I am going to actively hunt where it is and try and position it on my blade someplace that I feel strong and good. The problem is that, especially in the beginning, we don't associate the sword as part of our body. So what we end up doing is throwing our body at it. And people will put their fist in front of their head, they'll get their hand hit. It's hilarious, but
it hurts.
It hurts a lot. So it's to be avoided, right? So get used to throwing it in line with your shoulder for ease and dignity. Now, you can do the no pause version with hands. You can do the pause version with one hand, right? As a general rule, any of the one-handed work that we do in the katas, the moment we will bring two hands to the work is at the end when we centralize to chudan, right? So I'll push, and as my rear side comes up, my hand will engage the tsuka, and I can go through kamayotoku as normal. Now, let's talk about imbu. The imbu form of this kata almost always involves using the pause. It is always two-handed. we don't generally, aside from Sasen, of course, we don't demonstrate one-handed work, one-handed solo longsword work. Not for any reason, we just don't. But other than that, it's nothing special, right? So, we've gone over the basics. We've gone over the variants. There's one more variant that is a little bit more obscure, and that is where we do not leave the center line, but rather I work the center line and drive him in. This becomes less of what we would traditionally think of as, okay, a reception, and more of an active deflection, how most people think of parries, right? Which is something akin to slapping their sword away. So for this demonstration, Eddie will be uchidachi and I will be shidachi. So I don't leave the line of attack. We start off as normal. He's already up in hasso, so I'll already be down in gedan. He starts to step, I start to step. 1, 2, 3. This can be done with a pause or without. And a cut. Right? So, what I'm doing here, I take my steps, ba, 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 and then I'm going to drive straight forward in kind of a hara, right? Lead foot,
It's not a
back
hop.
foot. It's not a hop, it's a stride, right? So, I stride, I come. As he is coming to strike my sword, I am going to strike the side of his sword with the side of my sword, so that I have created that same sort of safety triangulation that we saw in Hasso Uke to the side. It circles back, boom, circle. I come into Koshimi Hanmi, my hips are diagonal to the line of attack, and I cut straight in on him, boom, straight in on the line, depending on where his sword arm is, of course. In the kata, he is trying to retreat very quickly to that full hasso position so that I can get his arm with it. It does not always happen, and so what'll end up happening is shidachi will pause, right, mid-cut, as you saw in our demonstration. So we'll do this one more time so that you can see the work. He starts off in hasso, I start off in gedan, and we step 1, 2, 3. Bottom. Just as so. Kata finishes as normal. He had space. He would retreat. He would come to Chudan. We centralize on Chudan. He begins Kamayo Toku. We go through Kamayo Toku, chicken steps, and we're done. So, again, just like the centerline variant for hasso, it's not ideal, right? The best way of doing it is, of course, the way that we teach people in the beginning to do it, which is this method in which we lead the opponent, we control their expectations, and we use those expectations to create an opening for ourselves to work in a way that is very difficult to detect, but which keeps us safe by virtue of our position. But, you know, if every fight was under ideal circumstances, you wouldn't have to train so hard, right? And people do weird things. I mean, people have some really weird things that they do. Both professionals and amateurs, right? And sometimes person swings and you just get caught, right? And you have to figure out how to respond to it when your distance is poor, when your relation is poor, when everything is working against you. And so having this understanding that you can control their sword in this kind of fashion, it's powerful, right? It has a lot of utility. And unfortunately, this method is not, it's not practiced very much in Hyoho anymore. For whatever reason. But it it has value, and it's worth keeping alive, I think. So that's pretty much it for uke nagashi hidari. Now, uke nagashi migi is going to be a short video that is kata number 5, because it is the same thing, but to the right, of course. Yep, just like the hasso katas. That ends our doubled up kata set, but the ideas that we learn in this basic, this basic first 5 kata, get out of the way and poke the dude. This is how you cut a guy. This is how you keep the guy from cutting you. This is really, it's important. And all the other kata are built off of these 5 kata. So, oftentimes when we're beginning, we can think to ourselves, oh, what I need to do is complete this. And that is not beneficial. For one, Koryu is not something that you complete. It is something that you absorb. And it takes more time than just simply memorizing the kata, right? And I'm not saying that, don't memorize the kata, stick on sasen for, 100 days or whatever. I'm just saying don't be in a rush to get to the next step, right? YouTube is always here. You can go online and find the programs that download the videos, download it, save it, take your time, let it absorb. Don't rush. Don't rush, right? Don't muddy your waters. I'm not saying don't work hard, right?
Don't be lazy.
Yeah, don't be lazy. But, going fast for fast's sake is never good, right? So, that's it. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Nope.
That's it for uke nagashi. As always, if you want to understand this, you have to pick up a sword and go train.